the Queen, meant to us all. As Shakespeare says of the earlier Queen Elizabeth, she was a pattern to all princes.
A private meeting at Clarence House in 2023 turned explosive when King Charles admitted he had wasted precious decades of his life. From mishandling Diana's death to hiding his true love for Camilla, Charles began confessing the mistakes that tormented him for years. But there was one regret he couldn't shake: letting his father force him into a decision that would destroy lives. This is the story of how pressure, duty, and fear led to Charles's darkest chapter. King Charles III became king on September 8, 2022, after waiting longer than anyone else in British history to take the throne. At 73, he was also the oldest person ever to become king. His wait lasted an incredible 70 years, starting when he became heir at just 3 years old. To understand how long that is, consider this. When Charles was born in 1948, Winston Churchill was Prime Minister, and the world was still recovering from World War II. Over these decades, Charles saw huge changes in Britain and the world. He lived through the Cold War, the rise of the digital age, and the transformation of Britain into a modern global power. He watched as 15 different prime ministers worked with his mother, Queen Elizabeth II, during her record-breaking reign. As Prince of Wales, Charles had to balance his role carefully, knowing any mistake could affect his future as king. The long wait shaped Charles's life in big ways. He became the first heir to the throne to graduate from university, earning a degree from Trinity College, Cambridge, in 1970. With so much time before becoming king, Charles pursued his passions, like environmental conservation and urban planning. He started more than 20 charities, including the Prince's Trust, which has helped over 1 million young people since 1976. But this wait wasn't easy. Charles often felt trapped by the expectations of his role. In a 1994 documentary, he admitted feeling like he had to endure misfortune as part of his duty. He also had to watch his mother bear the heavy responsibilities of the crown into her 90s, knowing his own time as king would likely be short. Charles faced immense pressure to live up to royal traditions, even when they conflicted with his personal wishes. This tension was especially clear in his romantic life. At 32, he was pressured to marry Lady Diana Spencer on July 29, 1981. Family pressure, especially from his father, Prince Philip, played a big role. Since he was 18, the press had closely followed his dating life, turning every girlfriend into a possible future queen. This intense scrutiny made it hard for Charles to have natural, genuine relationships. By 1980, when he met Diana, the pressure to find a wife had become overwhelming. Prince Philip reportedly pushed Charles to make a choice in 1981: either propose to Diana or end their relationship. With his father's insistence and the Queen's approval of Diana, Charles felt trapped. He proposed on February 3, 1981, despite having met Diana only 13 times. Their whirlwind courtship left little time for Charles to reflect on his feelings or the consequences of his decision. In their engagement interview, Diana said they were in love, but Charles's response, whatever in love means, hinted at the trouble ahead. This rushed decision would haunt him for decades, bringing personal unhappiness and public scandals. One of Charles's biggest regrets was not being honest about his feelings for Camilla Parker Bowles, his longtime love. Charles and Camilla had a close relationship in the early 1970s, but circumstances, including her marriage to Andrew Parker Bowles, kept them apart. Despite this, Charles stayed close to Camilla, something he did not fully disclose to Diana. Early in their relationship, Diana learned about Charles and Camilla's past through palace gossip, which made her feel betrayed. Charles's actions didn't help. 2 weeks before his wedding to Diana, he gifted Camilla a bracelet engraved with their nicknames Fred and Gladys, deepening Diana's suspicions. Throughout their marriage, Charles's connection with Camilla caused tension. Diana often felt jealous and isolated, especially after overhearing Charles express his love for Camilla on the phone. Charles later realized that his lack of honesty hurt Diana deeply and worsened the troubles in their marriage. A more transparent approach might have prevented years of emotional pain for everyone involved. The public nature of Charles and Diana's troubled relationship added to the heartbreak. From the start, their engagement attracted enormous media attention. Paparazzi followed Diana everywhere, and their private struggles quickly became public knowledge. As their marriage fell apart, tabloids reported rumors of infidelity and separation. The situation escalated in 1992 when Andrew Morton's book, Diana, Her True Story, exposed details of their unhappy marriage. Charles's admission of infidelity in a 1994 TV interview, followed by Diana's famous Panorama interview in 1995, where she said, "There were 3 of us in this marriage," turned their personal pain into a global spectacle. This public exposure not only hurt Charles and Diana, but also impacted their sons, Prince William and Prince Harry. Diana's struggles with mental health were well known, including her battle with bulimia, which began after Charles commented on her figure during their engagement. Both Charles and Diana had extramarital affairs, which added to the emotional strain. Diana's feelings of isolation and despair became clear as she spoke openly about her depression and self-harm. On September 6, 1997, the world watched as young princes William, 15, and Harry, 12, walked behind their mother Diana's coffin in a long funeral procession through London. It was one of the most unforgettable moments in royal history. This decision, now deeply regretted by King Charles III, was made under intense pressure. Charles, then Prince of Wales, had initially resisted the idea, but palace officials insisted that the boys' participation was necessary to show unity and meet public expectations. The night before the funeral, Prince Philip, their grandfather, told the boys, "I'll walk if you walk," and that sealed their involvement. Over the years, this decision has haunted Charles. He has privately expressed regret, admitting he underestimated the long-term effects on his sons. He has often said he felt trapped, trying to be a supportive father while also fulfilling the heavy demands placed on the royal family. In 2017, during the 20th anniversary of Diana's death, Prince Harry publicly shared that no child should ever be asked to do what they did, walking behind their mother's coffin in front of the entire world. This brought the decision back into focus and deepened Charles's remorse. Since then, Charles has worked hard to mend his relationship with his sons, especially Harry, as part of his efforts to make amends. The emotional toll of that day has stayed with William and Harry throughout their lives. Both have spoken openly about the trauma. Harry, in particular, has revealed how it affected him. In a 2021 interview, he described how the experience led to years of panic attacks and severe anxiety. He recalled feeling disconnected from reality during the procession, saying he was just doing what was expected. William has also shared how difficult that day was for him. In a documentary, he explained that he used his long fringe to shield himself from the crowd's gaze, feeling torn between his duty and his private grief. This experience shaped both princes' views on mental health and their advocacy for awareness. Charles himself faced overwhelming grief after Diana's death. He was in Balmoral, Scotland, with William and Harry when he learned the tragic news on August 31, 1997. His first concern was protecting his sons, keeping them away from the public eye so they could grieve privately. However, this decision was criticized by the media and the public. who expected the royal family to return to London immediately. Charles faced accusations of being cold and uncaring, despite his efforts to shield his children from further trauma. Behind closed doors, Charles was deeply affected by Diana's death. Friends described how he spent hours in his study at Highgrove, looking through old photos and mementos of Diana. He struggled with the realization that their tumultuous relationship would never have the chance to heal. The funeral was especially difficult for him. While he remained composed for the cameras, those close to him said he was heartbroken. During this time, Charles found support in his relationship with Camilla Parker Bowles, now Queen Consort. However, their relationship was still a sensitive issue, and he had to carefully navigate public opinion and his son's emotions. King Charles III has struggled throughout his life to balance his royal duties with being a father. This was especially clear when his sons, Prince William and Prince Harry, were young. Just one day after William was born on June 21, 1982, Charles had to leave for a 6-week tour of Australia and New Zealand. This meant missing out on important bonding time with his newborn. This pattern continued as his children grew up. In 1991, Charles missed Harry's 7th birthday because of a visit to Turkey. Harry was heartbroken, showing how difficult it was for Charles to juggle his public responsibilities with his role as a father. Even so, Charles tried to be present when he could, often taking his sons to Highgrove on weekends to teach them about his love for nature and organic farming. After Princess Diana's death in 1997, Charles faced an even harder task. He had to comfort his grieving sons while also being the public face of the monarchy during a time of national mourning. This loss made him more determined to focus on his sons' emotional needs. Over the years, Charles has expressed regret about not spending enough time with William and Harry when they were young. In a 2021 interview, he admitted it was hard being away for so long, saying it was a shame he couldn't be more involved during those early years. The strain between Charles and Harry has grown over the years, especially after Harry and Meghan Markle decided to step back from royal duties in 2020. This decision, often called Megxit, caused major tension. Harry has spoken openly about feeling like he was always in William's shadow and how he felt overlooked. In his memoir, Spare, Harry shared painful moments, including a joke Charles once made about not being his real father, which deeply hurt him. Their relationship became even more strained when Harry revealed in interviews and his book that Charles had stopped taking his calls and cut off financial support before they left royal life. Harry has also accused Charles of leaking stories to the press to protect his own image. Despite these issues, Charles has tried to show love and support. In his first speech as king, he mentioned Harry and Meghan with warmth. However, their relationship remains distant, and even at Charles's coronation in 2023, Harry's presence was brief, with little interaction between them. Looking back, Charles has admitted there are things he wishes he had done differently as a father. He regrets not being around more during his sons' childhoods because of his royal responsibilities. He also feels he could have done more to shield them from intense public scrutiny, especially after Diana's death. Allowing them to walk behind her coffin is something he still feels deeply sorry for. Raised in a strict royal environment, Charles struggled to express his emotions openly, which may have created distance between him and his sons. He has since tried to be more emotionally available, especially with his grandchildren, and has shown a desire to adapt and learn from his past mistakes. King Charles III also deeply regrets not being able to protect Camilla from the relentless public scrutiny they endured for decades. This reached its worst in the late 1980s and early 1990s, when their affair became public knowledge. In 1989, Princess Diana confronted Camilla about the affair at a party, an emotional moment later revealed in an audio tape. Things became even worse in 1993 with the infamous Camilla-gate scandal. A leaked phone call between Charles and Camilla, published by The Mirror, revealed intimate and embarrassing details about their relationship. Charles joking about becoming a tampon for Camilla became the subject of public ridicule, making the scandal even more humiliating for both of them. The backlash was harsh and long-lasting. Camilla faced angry letters, widespread public disapproval, and intense ridicule. Many people opposed the idea of her ever becoming queen. In 2022, Camilla spoke to British Vogue about the toll this scrutiny took on her life, describing it as horrid, and admitting she only survived because of her family's support. Despite the severity of the situation, Charles could not publicly defend her because of royal protocols. It wasn't until 2005, 35 years after they first met, that Charles and Camilla could finally marry, which only added to the prolonged difficulty of their relationship. When the public learned about their relationship, the challenges intensified. In 1992, Andrew Morton's book, Diana, Her True Story, exposed the affair, with Diana herself as the main source. This revelation damaged Charles's image and put Camilla under harsh public and media scrutiny. Then, in 1994, Charles admitted to adultery in a televised interview, saying he had been faithful to Diana until their marriage irretrievably broke down. Instead of repairing his image, this confession further fueled public interest in his affair with Camilla. The Camilla-gate scandal in 1993 brought the scrutiny to a new level. The leaked phone call turned into tabloid fodder, with late-night comedians mocking them endlessly. Camilla became the target of blame for the breakdown of Charles and Diana's marriage. Even within the royal family, there was resistance. The Queen Mother reportedly disliked Camilla, comparing her to Wallis Simpson, whose relationship with Edward VIII had forced his abdication. These tensions made their relationship even more complicated. Despite these challenges, Charles and Camilla eventually began appearing together publicly in 1999, starting with an event at the Ritz Hotel in London. Even then, they had to be careful, arriving separately and leaving together, reflecting how sensitive their relationship remained to public opinion. One of Charles's greatest regrets is the decades-long wait before he could openly embrace his relationship with Camilla. Their love story began in the early 1970s, but it took over 30 years for them to officially be together. In 1973, Charles left on a naval mission, and during this time, Camilla married Andrew Parker Bowles. Charles was devastated, writing to his great-uncle about how heartbroken he felt. Although they stayed friends throughout the 1970s, royal expectations and duties kept them apart. Charles married Lady Diana Spencer in 1981, a decision seen as more appropriate for an heir to the throne. But this marriage led to years of unhappiness for both Charles and Diana. Charles and Camilla rekindled their romance in 1986, 5 years into Charles's marriage to Diana. Their secret affair added strain to an already troubled marriage and became a source of public scandal later on. Camilla faced tremendous hostility, often being portrayed as the other woman. The media and public vilified her, and she was blamed for breaking up Charles and Diana's marriage. Even after Charles and Camilla married in 2005, opposition to her becoming queen persisted. It took years for public opinion to shift. Slowly, through her dedication to royal duties and her support of Charles, Camilla began to win over some of her critics. In 2022, after nearly 5 decades, Queen Elizabeth II gave her official endorsement, supporting Camilla as queen consort when Charles became king. This marked a turning point in her journey, but it came after years of struggle and perseverance. King Charles III has taken steps to address Britain's colonial history, but his approach is careful and measured. On October 31st, 2023, during a state visit to Kenya, he delivered a speech at a banquet in Nairobi that was both bold and historic. He acknowledged the violence and injustices committed during British colonial rule, particularly during the Mau Mau uprising from 1952 to 1960. He spoke of abhorrent and unjustifiable acts that caused immense suffering, emphasizing there was no excuse for such actions. This came at a symbolic time, just before Kenya's 60th anniversary of independence. The Mau Mau revolt remains a painful part of Kenya's history. Over 11,000 people were killed, and many others were detained in brutal camps, facing torture and abuse. While King Charles expressed deep regret, he did not issue a formal apology, which some Kenyan activists had hoped for. Instead, he showed a personal commitment to understanding the past by planning to meet with those directly affected by the violence. His words reflected a willingness to confront history, but they also highlighted the monarchy's delicate position in addressing such matters. This effort to engage with colonial history has extended beyond Kenya. On October 25, 2024, during a Commonwealth meeting in Samoa, King Charles again acknowledged the painful legacy of the British Empire. Speaking to representatives of 56 nations, many of them former colonies, he emphasized the need to understand history to make better choices for the future. He recognized the lingering impact of the empire's actions, but stopped short of offering formal reparations or apologies. This cautious approach reflects the balance he must maintain as a constitutional monarch, avoiding overt political stances while addressing complex historical issues. Charles's efforts go beyond words. In 2013, as Prince of Wales, he played a role in securing a £20 million settlement for over 5,000 Kenyans who suffered abuse during the Mau Mau uprising. Though significant, this gesture was not accompanied by a formal apology, leaving some unsatisfied. During his reign, Charles has gone further than previous monarchs in acknowledging the darker aspects of Britain's colonial past, but he remains constrained by political and legal considerations. In Kenya, Charles spoke of deep regret for colonial-era violence, but emphasized looking forward. He said, "None of this can change the past, but by addressing our history with honesty, we can strengthen our friendship today." Similarly, in Samoa, he acknowledged the pain of history while urging a focus on the future. These statements are carefully crafted to express empathy without crossing into formal apologies, which could have significant political and legal consequences. This approach has drawn mixed reactions. Some praise it as a step toward reconciliation, while others see it as insufficient, particularly in light of growing calls for reparations from nations impacted by British colonialism and the transatlantic slave trade. Critics argue that acknowledgement alone cannot fully address the harm caused by imperialism. King Charles's efforts reflect a broader shift in the monarchy's attitude toward its imperial past. Unlike his predecessors, he has been more willing to confront uncomfortable truths. Yet his constitutional role requires him to act within strict boundaries. Even when Downing Street ruled out any apology or reparations during the 2024 Commonwealth Summit, Charles's remarks had to align with the government's stance. King Charles III has shared his deep regrets about not pushing for changes to modernize the monarchy earlier in his life. On November 14, 2023, in a private meeting at Clarence House, he told his advisors that he felt he had wasted precious decades waiting to become king. This came as a surprise because Charles was always seen as someone who supported progressive ideas like environmentalism and interfaith dialogue. One key example of a missed opportunity happened in 1992, during the public fallout from his separation from Princess Diana. At that time, Charles had written a detailed plan for reforming the monarchy, including cutting the number of working royals and opening royal homes to the public. But the plan was abandoned because senior courtiers opposed it and felt the timing wasn't right. Looking back, Charles feels that making those changes then might have helped avoid later scandals and criticisms, especially about financial transparency and the roles of less prominent royals. Charles also regrets not using his environmental platform more effectively. Even though he was ahead of his time in talking about sustainability, he now thinks he could have done more. During a dinner at Highgrove on January 22, 2024, he told guests that he should have pushed harder for governments and corporations to act on climate change in the 1980s and 1990s, when the issue was often ignored. As king, Charles faces a challenge in balancing royal traditions with the need to make the monarchy more relatable to modern people. This has been clear since his coronation on May 6, 2023. For example, on September 8, 2023, the first anniversary of Queen Elizabeth II's death, Charles allowed cameras to film a private moment of him and Queen Camilla laying wreaths at Balmoral. This was something that would never have happened in earlier reigns and was meant to make the monarchy seem more open and transparent. But not everyone agrees with these changes. On December 1, 2023, at the diplomatic reception at Buckingham Palace, Charles chose to wear a modern business suit instead of the traditional military uniform. Some people praised this as a step toward modernization, while others felt it was a loss of important symbolism. Charles has also made bold decisions about royal properties. On March 15, 2024, Buckingham Palace announced that the King's private apartments would be opened for public tours during the summer, something never done before. This was meant to make the monarchy more accessible and to bring in extra funds for the Royal Collection Trust. Another major change involves royal patronages. On April 22, 2024, it was revealed that Charles plans to reduce the number of royal patronages by 30% over the next 5 years, focusing on fewer causes that align with his priorities like environmental and social issues. While some charities are worried about losing royal support, Charles believes this will make the family's work more meaningful. The king also feels regret about not addressing societal issues more directly during his time as Prince of Wales. On October 3, 2023, in a meeting with leaders of racial equality organizations, Charles admitted he should have spoken out more strongly against institutional racism in the 1980s and 1990s. He mentioned the murder of Stephen Lawrence in 1993 and the McPherson Report as moments when he could have taken a firmer stance. Wealth inequality is another area where Charles wishes he had done more. On January 15, 2024, while visiting a food bank in Manchester, he told volunteers he regretted not using his platform to highlight economic disparities after the 2008 financial crisis. Mental health is also a subject he feels he could have supported earlier. Although his sons, especially Prince William, have been vocal about mental health awareness, Charles now thinks he should have led the way in the 1990s. In a newsletter interview on March 7, 2024, Charles admitted that his own struggles with public and family pressures could have helped reduce the stigma around mental health. Lastly, education is another area where he feels he missed an opportunity. On May 22, 2024, during a meeting with education experts, Charles spoke about a reform proposal he had written in 1988, which focused on arts, practical skills, and environmental awareness in schools. He never released it because he worried about stepping outside his role as heir. King Charles III's journey with his health and legacy has been deeply emotional and complex. In November 2023, during a routine checkup, his doctors noticed something unusual. Tests confirmed he had a rare form of blood cancer. He immediately started intensive chemotherapy treatments 3 times a week at the London clinic. Despite this, he kept working in private, managing government duties and holding meetings while trying to keep the diagnosis a secret. He believed this would protect his family and maintain stability, especially since the Princess of Wales was also unwell at the time. However, as January 2024 approached, rumors about his health started to spread. Social media buzzed with wild speculations and conspiracy theories. Advisors urged him to speak openly, but Charles hesitated, worried about public scrutiny. Finally, on February 5, 2024, he shared the news, after being convinced that hiding it any longer could damage trust. The announcement brought relief to some, but also overshadowed other royal activities. Reflecting on this, Charles admitted he should have been more transparent earlier. He learned a valuable lesson about balancing personal privacy with his public role. The diagnosis greatly affected the royal family. Charles couldn't fulfill many duties, so senior royals had to take on more responsibilities. Prince William, as the heir, stepped into a leading role, representing the monarchy at major events. This sudden shift put pressure on him and his wife, Catherine, who was still recovering from her own health challenges. Balancing their royal roles with raising their children became a delicate struggle. Meanwhile, Charles's illness brought a brief moment of connection with Prince Harry, who visited London after the announcement. Though their meeting was short, it signaled a small step toward healing their strained relationship. However, reconciliation remained difficult, as Charles's treatment schedule left little time for family matters. Charles had ambitious plans to modernize the monarchy, including a slimmed-down approach, but his health put these on hold. With fewer working royals, extended family members like Princess Anne and Prince Edward had to take on extra duties. The public reacted with both sympathy and concern, questioning the monarchy's long-term stability. Charles worked hard to reassure people that the institution remained strong, even as he faced exhausting treatments. His health struggles also forced Charles to think deeply about his legacy. At 75, he felt the urgency of time slipping away. He regretted the years spent waiting to become king and was determined to leave a lasting impact. His primary focus was on global issues, especially climate change. He began working on a major environmental initiative called the Charles Charter, which he hoped would define his reign. At the same time, he made efforts to repair family relationships. In March 2024, he had a meaningful phone call with Prince Harry, their first real conversation in over a year. Though progress was slow, Charles wanted to bring his family together as part of his legacy.